Well, hey, Vision. Okay, I'm glad it's summertime. I love summer. I don't like winter. Have we got any winter fans in here? You'd rather have it winter. Wow. Okay, I'm a summertime fan. So let's talk for a minute about some favorite summertime foods. Okay, real simple one. Who likes popsicles? You got to go popsicles. Yeah, see that little hand over there? Love those popsicles. They're cheap. Yeah, love popsicles. Okay, how about burgers off the grill? Yes, love those burgers. Um, for all the dads, I know next week is Father's Day, so we don't have to cook. But I tell you, on the grill, mine always shrink. They really shrink, and then they get real thick and shrink. So I love going to cookout because they're always right, and I cannot make burgers. Cannot do burgers. Okay, you saw a picture a couple minutes ago about watermelons. So who likes a good old face full of watermelon? Yes, that is delicious. Of course, in our series, we're talking about grapes. So last week, I mentioned grape ice cream. So who are our grape ice cream fans again? Grape. And we actually had somebody went out and got grape ice cream last Sunday after church. I said, okay, look, I love ice cream, but I'm not using my deal meal points on grape ice cream. I'm going chocolate. I'm putting stuff in it, putting M&Ms and all that. Grape, wow. But okay, and how about, let's see, what was, oh, of course, how can I forget the last one? It's banana pudding. Man, who loves banana pudding? Oh, yeah, now, and I was coached on this between services. It's nanner pudding, right? Nanner pudding. Okay, now, my son Elijah, who I won't point him out, but he loves nanner pudding. It's like his favorite thing. Oh, his friends are pointing him out, okay. But I like it when we have it in the fridge because I'll go in there and just like peel up the foil and just steal like some of the cookies out of there and leave the pudding. Because to me, like fruit and dessert, like don't combine. That just is two, separate entities. But that's great if you love nanner pudding and popsicles and all the foods of summer. Well, here at Vision, we're not slowing down for the summer. God's going to keep growing us. He's going to keep teaching us. And as we go through this series, we're in week 2 of the Vine. If you missed week 1, no worries. Catch it online. Go to viz.church. You can catch last week's message. And like Courtney mentioned, you get the book in the lobby. It's free. Pick up one per household and read with us. We went through chapters 1 and 2, reading on your own last week. And this week we'll go 3 and 4. And it is a good read, very enjoyable read. I've enjoyed my copy. Mine's got a little different cover, but it's the same book. And I am loving what God is teaching us through Bruce Wilkinson and his teachings about the vine. And Jesus, like I said last week, as a great leader, I believe he was a great simplifier. So he took things that they could relate to, like grapes. And I think if he was around today, let's see, who are my grape fans again over? Finally, again? Okay. I know it's kind of dark. One hand. Oh, missed it. Sorry. And distracted the boys. Okay, Zach, we'll try again. There you go. Oh, I know it's tough. In and out of the light. I know. Last week he said, I'll just open my mouth and hit it. So, man, that's a long shot from here to make it in your mouth. But Jesus, as a great simplifier, maybe he would have taught us this morning from banana pudding. And he said, look, you know bananas and you understand bananas. His guys back then knew grapes. They knew vines. And he stopped and taught them from the vine. So we're spending 4 weeks on this. Today's week 2. And I want you, if you got your takeaway card, pull that out. Or if you got your phone or your iPad, you can go on the Bible app, click on that, click on Vision and Events, and you can actually get the takeaway card right there. Save that event. You'll have it with you all week long. I love that tool. It's even, you click on it, the verses pop open. It is a great tool for us. Your hard copy or your electronic takeaway card, because I say all the time, your time with us is just a catalyst. Okay, I love that you're spending an hour with us, but I want this to be a catalyst in your walk so that you spend time with God during the week. And that he takes those verses and he takes these concepts and he takes this book and he speaks directly to you. Just like Michael prayed that God's got something for you today personally and you this week that he wants to teach you through the vine. Now this vine, with 3 weeks to go, we've got a keyword each of the remaining 3 weeks. Today's is going to be clean. Next week is going to be prune, and the last week is going to be abide. Now, clean, I think we can grasp that pretty easy because most of us are coming to church, we're pretty clean. We got our showers cleaned up. Pruning, you're saying, man, I don't want any of that. And I'm skipping next week because pruning, no. Pruning is for our benefit. It really is. And God's got something for you next week on Father's Day. Now, he's got something for the dads on Father's Day. So make sure you invite a dad with you next week. Because if you remember last year, we even did something with couches in here that just like shocked dads everywhere. But next week we'll have some fun for the dads. But we talk about pruning. And then last week we talked about abiding. It's about a relationship, connecting, remaining. We have a keyword each week. clean, prune, abide. Today we're looking again in John chapter 15, and then we'll look a little bit in the book of Hebrews to see what God teaches us in these two passages that we can connect better with God and truly have fruit in our life that matters. So in John 15, I want you to remember that this teaching from Jesus was in his last week of his life. In fact, it was his last night as he spent time with the guys closest to him, knowing that he had a mission that he needed to get out because he looked out across generations and saw you. He said, I need to get the mission to her. I need to get the mission to him, to teenagers, to kids. And this mission of truly salvation was something that Jesus was entrusting to 11 guys, saying, guys, you got to get this. You can't drop the ball on this. You're the ones taking this. And so that's why he taught them in such a simple way about staying connected to him. So this John chapter 15, we got some vineyard pictures. If you saw them last week or online, I went out to a vineyard. You can take a look at this one. It shows like a row in a vineyard. And if you're like me, you don't spend a lot of time in a vineyard. Don't get out to Shelby and go see this vineyard. But you go out there, and there's rows everywhere. There's vines and branches, and most of all, there's grapes. Because Jesus, as he walked with his 11 guys on the last night of his life, and knew he wanted to teach them in a simple way, because the next 24, 36 hours, we're going to rock their world. He thought, man, I can't be all theological and complicated. I need to teach simple. So he stopped by a vineyard, and he said, guys, I'm going to teach you some things tonight that I want you to never forget. And in fact, he spoke that through them to us. So we pick up again in John chapter 15, verse 1, that Jesus says, I'm the true vine, my Father's the gardener. So in his story, there's really three characters. There's the vine, which is him. There's the branches, which are us. And there's the gardener or the vine dresser, who is God the Father. And Jesus says, my Father's a gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that doesn't bear any fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes. You see that word prune? We're going to dig into that next week. And again, don't be scared by that word, because if you know anything about gardening, and who are our gardeners in here? Who's good in the garden? I'm totally not good in the garden. So if you are good in the garden, you know what pruning's about, and we'll talk about that more next week. While every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes it so it'll be even more fruitful. He goes on in verse 3, says, you're already clean. That's today's word, clean. We're going to unpack that some more in a couple minutes, but you'll see this word clean is talking about expanding and growing and having more fruit come. You're already clean because of the word I've spoken to you. Remain in me as I also remain in you. And that remain, that'll be our final word, week 4, that remain or that abide. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. So he's looking these guys in the eyeball saying, you don't understand this, but I'm going to be gone. But we're going to remain in each other. I need you to stay plugged into me, connected to me. You're going to need this. And he looks at us and says the same thing. You're going to need this week. You're going to need it. So our next picture of the vine, again, this isn't just a little ropey thing that falls down and flutters all cute. This is a deep, thick root in the ground that comes out of the ground and heads off in different directions to branch and to send out nutrients. And this is not something flimsy. This is firm, dependable, solid. Jesus is saying, I am that vine. And in verse 5, this is a key verse in the passage. He says, I am the vine. I'm the one. You're my branches. You're the branches coming off of me. If you remain in me and I in you, you'll bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, I like this. He's talking about measurement. He's talking about bearing a lot of fruit. Now, okay, if you know me, you know I'm competitive. Has anybody ever played cornhole with me? Okay, because you know when I'm playing cornhole, right, Joey, I'm going to try to beat you. I'm going to try to beat your dad. I'm going to try to beat the little kids and the grandmas. I'm going to take out everybody in cornhole because I'm competitive. I like to win. And so I love how Jesus, I think he was competitive too. He said, I want you to be the best you can. I don't want you to be, a little, a little 5-brancher. Who in our middle section is a great fan? Any great fans in here? Okay, Rania, so I'm going, that. And he says, look, I don't want you to be a little 5-graper. I want you to be this big old cluster. I'm not going to throw that one out. Cassandra's like, whoa, why'd I sit in the front row? No. But Jesus, he's saying, don't aim just for little amounts of fruit. says, aim to be the best you can, to flourish in fruit. And I like that. He goes on and says, if you don't remain in me, you're like a branch that really is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. Now, let me unpack this for a minute, because in 4 weeks of talking about the vine, I want to make sure that you hear the truth about salvation. That you don't just hear words and say, okay, well, Matt's talking about being somehow connected to God. That Matt is talking about this vine and branches. Listen, what I'm talking about, I want to make sure everybody understands, is there is a salvation that is offered to us, that if you don't take him up on that, you will have no value with your life. That literally, when you die, discarded, burnt, gone. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to help you understand the reality that salvation, a relationship with Jesus, is as simple as A, B, and C. Now you say, man, can it really be as simple as A, B, C? Look, I was talking to a man this week. He's middle-aged. And he told me that he came to Christ not at age 11, at age 39. At age 39. And he'd been in church. He'd been involved in church. Clearly, he'd heard God's word in church. And at some point, God got his attention in a different way. He said, wait a second, I'm not connected to the vine. So ABC, A is admitting you're a sinner. A is saying, look, I am not perfect. You're not perfect. My wife would say, no, I'm definitely not perfect. My kids would say, my daddy's not perfect. And I think we'd all agree, say, okay, I can admit that. I'm not perfect. B, though, of believing that Jesus, he is the perfect one. He came to earth, lived as God's son, and when he died, that he died a death he didn't deserve to earn something for us we couldn't earn. This is John 15. In John 14, Jesus has the most controversial verse in the Bible. In John 14:6, when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can get to the Father. No one can get to heaven except through me. And society today saying, that's so narrow. Oh, man, you're so narrow. And we say, well, actually, it is narrow. It is narrow. There's one way. Now, listen, I greatly respect what Muhammad Ali accomplished in his life. He stood up for what he believed. He made an impact. Well, when you hear some people say things this past week at his funeral saying, all different faiths, that's great. Let's all agree and have faith, and let's love each other, and we'll all go to a better place someday. Well, I saw some posts on it this week that I appreciate. Christians humbly saying, well, if you believe the Bible, that's not true. Not every faith and not every belief, and you just believe it, you're going to go somewhere. Jesus said there's one way to heaven. And so I want to make sure if you only get one thing out of 4 weeks in the vine, that is salvation comes by admitting you're a sinner, by believing that Jesus is the only way to heaven. And see, you choose to follow him. Say, God, I'll give you my life at age 11, at age 39, at age 59, wherever you're at, that you would say, okay, I don't have that. Today you can get that. So Jesus, when he talks about this vine and these branches, and you see this next picture of a cluster of grapes, and a cluster of grapes shows health and nutrition and growth and potential because it is connected to the source of life. And Jesus wants that for us. He wants us to be connected to the only source. Remember, he said, I'm the way, I'm the only way. And in verse 7, he says, if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you ask whatever you wish and it'll be done for you. Remember I said last week, this isn't a name it and claim it kind of thing. Say, God, I want that car, give me that car. God is saying, through his son Jesus, he's saying, the more connected you are to me, the more you will want the things I want. That you'll be praying for things that God wants to see happen. And God will say, when you pray that way, you will have what you wish for because I will be your power source to do that. And in verse 8, he finishes up and says, all these things, they're not for your glory. They're not even for your comfort. They're not even for your blessing. This is to my Father's glory, that more people will see who he really is, that you'd bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. So this cleaning process, we're going to unpack it in a little bit. This cleaning process is a growth process that Jesus talks about this vine and how to have more fruit. Because today's bottom line, you'll see it in your takeaway card, it comes from the book. It's the first secret of the vine, that if your life consistently bears no fruit, God's going to intervene to discipline you. If you don't have much fruit in your life, God cares about that. You say, well, Matt, what's fruit? Fruit is defined in Galatians 5 when Paul, he talks about joy and peace and patience and love and kindness. He lists 9 of these fruit that I want in my life. And you know, even if this is your first time ever in church, you say, Matt, I want peace. Oh, man, I want peace. When I'm not feeling good about life, I would love to have joy. I don't know how to have that. Jesus says, you can have much fruit in your life if you're connected to me. But this word discipline, especially on the first Sunday of summer, like discipline, man, I don't want to talk about discipline. In fact, when I was preparing this, and I said, God, look, it's the first Sunday of summer. Can't we do something light, like, community and fun and joy? And God's like, that's not where we're at. God said, you're going through the vine, and week 2 is going to be about discipline, about growing in me, about being clean. And as I dug into it, I said, okay, God, I'm going to bring that this week. Especially because when I listened to the song we're going to close with today, and I listened to it, and let God speak to me in it, where he talks about taking literally our ashes of our past, our ruins of our past, or even our ruins where we're at now. And he says, look, you can get past that. I want to change that and transform that, but it's going to take some work. It's going to take some discipline. It's going to take us working on this together. So let's talk about discipline. Okay, now first of all, does anybody remember the old character in the book, Ramona Quimby? The old Ramona books? I used to love those books. Ramona, this girl she had a little sass to her, okay, a little sassy attitude. So she'd be sitting at the table and doing her thing, a little sassy, and her dad say, Ramona, you remember what your grandmama used to say? Say the first time's funny, the second time's silly, the third time's a spanking. They kind of put Ramona in her place. Now, when we think about discipline, who remembers back in school when you had to write on the board, I will not blank, or on paper, 100 times, I will not talk in class. I will not chew gum. I will not poke so-and-so. You're like, yeah, okay, I remember that kind of discipline. All right, now how about in school, did anybody have a teacher? I know today's students don't, that had the ruler. Okay, they had that ruler on the desk, and you got some scars to show from that ruler. These days, they can't do that anymore. But I say, hey, it made a difference. Now, okay, you take that to your house. All right, timeout. Who had like the timeout chair or the timeout corner, or you just had a place you just had to send them to you got to get out. You got to get out of my presence, or else I'm going to bring out something from the kitchen, because what was in the kitchen. And I appreciate my friend Bill. Sometimes he posts some things about the kitchen and the device they used back then called the spoon. All right, did you have a mama, yes, who used that spoon and wore you out with the spoon? Okay, now let me tell you a story, though. Because back when me and my brother were growing up, and my mom, was a single mom for a period of time, and she had discipline. She had discipline. We're out shopping one day, and we're in like Toys R Us. We're looking at some toys. It was summer. She said, hey, boys, you want to get one of these? And me and Tom look at each other, and we're like, we're not taking one of those to the house. That could be fun and everything. But man, the first day something goes wrong, boom. We're like, no, man, no paddles. No paddles in our house. So, but God, sometimes truly, he uses pain to get our attention. I'm not saying that all of your pain comes from him, but I am saying that sometimes when he wants to get your attention and work some discipline in your life, some cleaning in your life, he allows pain. Well, in Hebrews chapter 12, we got a couple verses we're going to look at. In Hebrews 12:11, I love this because it gives us a promise. And in Hebrews, it talks about discipline, and it understands us. The writer understands us and says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time. It doesn't. It never does. The spoon, the timeout, the paddle, it doesn't seem pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, something comes with it. It produces something. It produces a harvest, which I would love a harvest of good stuff in my life. So God's saying, discipline produces a harvest of righteousness, which that means right standing with God. It means relationship healing or mending or building with God. Righteousness and peace for those who've been trained by it. And training, that shows a process. Again, it's not a system. You can't just plug things in. It's a process, though, that we can work. Discipline to produce something. So let's talk about that. There's 3 degrees of this intervention God does. The first one's called rebuke. In Hebrews 12:5 says, my son or my daughter, and don't despise the chastening of God, of the Lord, our Father. Don't be discouraged when you're rebuked by him. So what's rebuking? Rebuking is verbal, all right? It's a verbal warning that God will send your way, maybe not audibly. You say, I haven't heard God. I think sometimes though you felt it. When he speaks to your heart, says, you got something going on that I want to speak into you about. Sometimes it's a word from a friend. They look at you and say, what are you doing? What are the choices you're making? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Sometimes you'll be flipping through your Bible, you come across something. Say, oh, man. A couple of days later, flipping somewhere else. Say, oh, man, that thing popped up again. Or you'll be listening to a message in here or a message on the radio or a message online, and God keeps speaking something into you about one topic, and you got to step back and say, is this God speaking to me? Is this God rebuking me because he wants me to flourish? He doesn't want me, again, to be a small cluster. He wants to grow me into something big. He's rebuking me. God says, I hope you get it then, because the second step is chastening. Chastening in verse 6 says, whom God loves, he chastens. Chasten, that involves a little more of your emotions, where you feel squeezed, you feel a pressure or a tension, and I think you've been there where you're doing something, you're acting a certain way, and something inside of you, you're like, oh man, I'm feeling tense, or I can't sleep, or something's on my mind, I can't let it go. And God is bringing it to you more than just a little verbal poke. He's doing something with your emotions to make you unsettled to where you can't shake it, and God doesn't want you to shake it because he wants you to grow. The third one is scourging. That just sounds painful, and it is painful. And in fact, when you read stories about Jesus and how he died and how they scourged him, it takes it from verbal, past emotional, into physical, where God says, look, you're not getting this, and I really want you to get this. It literally means to whip or to inflict punishment, and I don't want any of that. It means to cause scars and pain, and I don't want any of that. And God, as a good father, he doesn't want that either, but he knows that the result of you shifting from that, of me shifting from that, is going to be so much better. So he talks about cleaning, to back all the way up. That Jesus, walking through that vineyard, looking at these grapes, and he talks about cleaning them. Because grapes, when they're on a branch and they start to gain some weight, they actually start dipping, which is cool because it means there's more grapes on them. And they dip to where eventually, with some weight on them, they get in the dirt. And you know that something in the dirt and then gets water mixed in there, there's potential then for mold, for mildew, for this to start degenerating to where the vine dresser, if he's a good one, he won't just leave it in the dirt. That he'll take these grapes, and the cool thing with having grapes is my illustration, is I can keep everybody awake at church. I can wake them up. I can wake up the students. No, I'm just kidding. But these grapes, which are clean, and if you catch one, you can eat it. Okay, I'll go. There you go, right at you. Oh, good hands, good hands. Oh, in the mouth. There you go. Nah, couldn't make it. Okay. But cleaning these grapes, while we laugh and think about, okay, that's fun to talk about cleaning grapes, a good vine dresser will reach down into the dirt and will pick it up and we'll clean it. And as he hooks it up then, so it can hang, remember last week I talked about a basket full? I don't want just a mini branch or a cluster. I want to be a basket full of fruit. I want so much peace in my life that when anything comes to rock my world and say, man, how's Matt handling that? Say, because I got fruit. I got fruit in my life. So, man, how can you possibly be dealing with that? Because I have self-control. Because I want to have self-control. I want to have fruit. You say, okay, Matt, the fruit of God's Spirit, how do I have more in my life? God says, I need to clean the sin, the habits out of your life in a way that sometimes we don't even want it enough for ourselves. Because when we're talking about sin, and again, I was like, God, really? Like the first Sunday of summer, when everybody wants to kind of relax, he said, man, you got to talk about this because it's where we're going with the vine. So when I talk about, are you a controlling person? That literally, you say, okay, God, I know you got that, and I've got all the stuff in my life. I'm going to control things in a way that it'll be okay. And God says, no, that's not really faith. That's just you kind of believing that you're God. the control? What if it's a self-control issue? We say, okay, I have said things with my temper. I've done things with my actions that I hate when I do that. God says, then let's build some self-control because that's a fruit of my spirit. What about for us guys? We start talking about things like pornography, like lust, and everybody's like, I'm not looking the pastor in the eye. Talking about that. And the room gets quiet. I'm like, hey, then as a guy, I'll stand up here and say, then pornography and lust, that's something we deal with. Right, guys? I'm like, yeah, right. What about adultery? What about premarital sex? What about extramarital sex? What about faithlessness? What about pride, greed, gluttony? And you say, oh, man, I don't want to think about that. That's exactly where Satan wants you. He's not thinking about it. And God the Father says, I want to clean you. I don't want to have to scourge you. I don't even want to have to chasten you. And let's just talk about it. Let me just rebuke you. Let me speak through your pastor so that as you sing this last song and we pray, that you can work on that with God. You can go to our care room and pray with them. You can stand where you are and pray. You can sing there and just let God speak to you. Say, God, I want to flourish. I want to have abundance. Remember, much fruit is what Jesus promised. That when you go through your week this week and say, man, I don't feel peace. I don't have peace. Then I want you to remember this moment. Because I believe then something in your life is blocking you from getting God's peace. From letting God have that control. He wants to clean you.